Cam McClellan. Welcome to today's Wealth WOD. I'm here to introduce a good friend of mine, Steve Hogarty. Steve's been with us for a number of years. He's had a long career in the property industry, loves his property. I want to talk today, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Looking forward to it.
Look, I think one of the core things that we've been talking about over the last day or so is the advantages of new property overall. And myself and Steve have purchased many existing properties, so old properties over the years, and found ways to add value. And usually I do that through development on the back of those properties. But today I only purchase new properties, and I thought Steve is pretty adept, mate. He should be able to give us a good rundown on why new properties, the advantages against old property, mate. So
looking forward to showing you this example.
Take the floor.
The biggest problem that people have when they go to acquire an investment property, and I'm the old dog in this place, lucky to join the crew here at Open Wealth, but the biggest question I get is, why wouldn't I buy just an existing property? For us, it's all about efficiency and making sure that we understand the reasons why successful investors actually buy new and off the plan. So what I want to do is, I want to show you today a quick example of why you would never buy an old property. And it really comes down to cash flow efficiency. So if we think about real estate as a whole, it's performed really well. And I relate property in compound growth terms. So if I think about the way property's performed, it's performed around that 9.1%. Now, there's an old saying that property doubles in value every 7 years to 10 years. Now, what we need to do is understand compound growth, because compound growth is, as Einstein said, the eighth wonder of the world. So if I wanted a property to double in value in 7 years, I need a compound growth rate of 10%. And if I want a property to double in 10 years, I need a compound growth rate of 7.2%. Now, if we're going to be talking apples and apples, let's talk about the two ways of buying a property. You can either buy a property that's existing or a property that's off the plan or manufactured. Now, to be fair to say that if I wanted a property to get me 10%, to double in 10 years, I would probably buy something that's close to a city. So if I'm talking about a dollar value, let's talk a round number being $500,000 today, which is underneath the median house price or thereabouts, and it's a safe environment to be in. Now, the reality is, I know that I can get an existing property that's close to a city that'll give me this sort of an effect. So if I look at them side by side, what most people look at is they say, yeah, I'll go for the 10% property. And why people don't buy off the plan is because it has typically lower growth. So what I want to uncover is why this one is not the right property to buy. So if I think about the good things about this existing property, well, the obvious things are it's close to a CBD, it's got all of those amenities that people look for, it's in a sexy suburb. And it's the ones that buyers advocates push on people all the time. The good thing is about it, the growth is a definite. You can buy the property, do the settlement and rent it out straight away, opposed to buying something that may be not so much right on the fringe of a city, but you're manufacturing this, so we have to buy the land. And in this 500, let's say we're spending $250,000 on land and $250,000 improvements or the home. Now, this one here, we have to actually buy the land and settle the land, and then we have to wait for handover, and then we can get a tenant. That's a big put off for a lot of people. Where if I look at this one, the negatives far outweigh this growth. Firstly, the stamp duty implication if I was buying this property in Melbourne is going to be around $25,000. Now, not 1 cent of that is actually tax deductible. The other thing is that I'm not going to have a structural warranty or a builder's warranty. And the big thing about that is, and it's the elephant in the corner that a lot of people selling older properties don't talk about, is this. And this equals risk. And typically, if I think about the type of home that this house was, if we think back 20, 30 years, which is typically the age of some of these properties, they were built on strip foundations and stumps. And it doesn't matter if you go get a engineer's report on this property when you purchase it, in 1 week, or 1 year in 1 week, or 3 years in 1 week, you could have a deluge that lasts 5 days. Or alternatively, you could have a very dry period of time. And what happens to that soil conditions in the wet is that either you have subsidence, you have movement, and you know what happens if you have a little bit of movement at the bottom, you have massive at the top, and you can have massive damage here that could cost you literally thousands of dollars. And it may not be covered by insurance. But the bottom line is, if you buy this property today, and in 2 months' time, or whenever that happens, if you don't have any growth in that property in that period of time, what can happen is that the banks, if you've borrowed up to 90%, they are unlikely to lend you any more money on that property because it's already at a level, because you're actually not adding any value to it. All you're doing is maintaining it. The other thing is depreciation. More than likely, because of its age, you're going to have zero depreciation, and that'll have a massive effect on your cash flow. The yield, or the rent, is more than likely going to be around that 4% mark, because it's, if we think about the typical home that I grew up in, Cam probably grew up in, it was 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, single car garage on a very big block of land. When I grew up, my backyard was my universe. The block sizes have certainly come down in that period of time, and the trend now is smaller blocks of land and bigger homes. Much more rental appeal. You're definitely going to have maintenance, but how much is the question mark? And my experience is, on most people's income, this property could cost you anywhere for $150 negative, and if you put a renovation of a bathroom or a kitchen, if you atomise that over a 10-year period, that property could actually cost you $300 per week. Why don't we do this property? Cash flow. Where if I think about the alternative option, still remembering that we're buying a $500,000 property, the risks involved in building are on a multiple. Builders do go broke, and it happens every day of the week. Time delays in this period of time do happen. And they happen sometimes not by a few weeks, but several months. Variations to contract, we're very fortunate. We've actually got a consultant here that's actually been in the industry selling to the first home buyers, second home buyers, your Metricons, your this, that and the other. And he says the average variation to contract can be anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. Not getting your research right is going to make it a bad investment straight away. Over-capitalising and under-capitalising are a real concern, and overall that we need to think about the quality of the workmanship, which could cost you money. Now, everything that we do at Open Wealth eliminates all of that, and we can explain how that's done. But if I get to the nuts and bolts of why we do this particular property, firstly, from an acquisitions perspective, the stamp duty here on that sort of money is going to be around about $11,000. Now, once again, not tax deductible. But if I could guarantee a period of time between settlement of land and actually having a tenant of, let's say, 35 weeks, it's going to cost me somewhere in the vicinity of around about $12,000 of what we call interest during construction. Now, the big difference is, if I add that to that, yes, it is cheaper than here, but the big thing is this interest during construction is actually tax deductible. So it makes it a far more efficient purchase. The other thing is, by default, I am going to have a structural warranty and a builder's warranty. So there's no risk for the first 7 to 10 years. And that's typically when you want to make your money. The other thing is, by default again, I am going to have 100% deductions on this $250,000, which in the first 5 years, which is when you want to have cash flow efficiency, is going to mean the difference of nearly up to $10,000, or in some cases greater, of tax deductibility. I am going to, more than likely, because I'm in a brand new 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double lock-up garage home with a separate lounge, al fresco, stone benches, stainless steel appliances, heating and cooling. That's very much a tenant appeal. So I'm going to be able to get a much better rent, and I'm not going to have too much maintenance in the first 5 to 10 years. The big difference is on today's interest rates, this property could either be cash flow positive or worst case scenario, somewhere between $20 and $50 per week. Now, it's all about that ability to duplicate and to be able to hold multiple properties. Now, the reality is I can more than likely hold 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of property, which even when I consider potentially the lower growth rate, it means I'm going to be better off buying multiple. Why do we buy new properties? Cash flow. That's the only reason, and safety. I hope you enjoyed today's Wealth WOD. Great to be involved with it all.
Mate, cheers, thanks for the hoax. Glad you can be part of it, mate, and we hope to see you on future WODs.
Wonderful, looking forward to it.
Take care again.